I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin Sunanta Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried, will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Hey, everybody. I have an awesome show for you with someone that you know well. This is Kristin, and we're going to do this for Converge Autism Radio and also Mental Health News Radio because this topic is so important and we are seeing the results of constantly blathering about it for years. So yay. Our guest is Dr. Stephanie Holmes. She hosts multiple podcasts and she also just wrote a new book called Embracing the Autism Spectrum, Finding Hope and Joy Navigating the Neurodiverse Family Journey. She wrote it with her husband, Dan Holmes, who is also a host on many of her shows, and with her two daughters, Sydney and Erica. And why don't I just keep talking and Stephanie will never say anything. Just kidding. Hey, Stephanie.
There, it's always a pleasure to be on your show, Kristin. It's been a bit. It's been a minute, as they say.
It has. What a year. Man, I'm sure we did a show last year, maybe a couple, but last year, well, it's still this year, 2023. It's almost not this year anymore. It's kind of a blur for me. How about you?
Yes. So I was just kind of thinking, this past year, we were writing a book, starting research for a second book, a daughter getting married. I think I produced over 60 podcasts, YouTube content, 52 blogs, and I work full-time as a coach. So It's been a blur of a year for sure.
And you're out there supporting and empowering women all over the place, supporting and empowering people, of course, and then also empowering women. You brought Dr. Mary Jones to the network, who is just, I love her.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
She will be writing a chapter in my second book. So she will be part of the collaborative effort for book number 2 that is just now starting out.
Yeah, she already has been on her way. She's a pediatrician, for goodness sakes, but she's like on her way again, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us about the book and the journey of writing, putting it all together and doing it with your whole family.
Well, so it's interesting. At the beginning of January of 2023, I was, my husband and I were starting some research for neurodiverse couples. And so we created a survey. I have my doctorate. So, I wanted to do academic research that would be published in academic peer-reviewed journals. So that was the goal of 2023, was to get 1 or 2, maybe 3 articles published. So doing academic research is very exhausting and it has so many steps. So that was my goal for 2023. It's just a very modest little goal. Well, my oldest daughter comes to me first quarter and said, Mom, I'm thinking about that other book that you wrote, which was Confessions of a Christian Counselor, How Infertility and Autism Grew My Faith, which is coming off the market. But she's like, they're really kind of telling that story from your perspective, and I was a kid at the time, so I get it. But, I have my own perspective and my own memories. I really want to talk about my lived experience. Can we redo your book in like a mother-daughter story? And I was like, sure, let's do that. That would give you your perspective. And I think it would be more powerful to share, your stories, your feelings. So, and we're talking it through. Dan says, well, I'd like to share from a father's perspective. And then, I got identified. So I want to kind of talk to dads and fathers and talk about places I made mistakes, things I would have done differently. And I was like, great, well, add that in: father, daughter, husband, wife. And then the youngest said, well, there are certain perspectives of being a sibling to someone on the spectrum and having a dad on the spectrum. And I'd like to add a chapter to that. So then I was like, oh boy, this is becoming a little more complex than I thought it was going to be. But the result was a really great work that's been put together. That is the first of its kind for wife, husband, mother, father, lived experience, and sibling to all write from their personal perspectives in one story.
Oh, I just love it. Remember, listeners, it's Embracing the Autism Spectrum, available literally everywhere, right?
It is. You can find it on Amazon, BookBaby, an ebook, print book, audiobook. We have made for your learning pleasure and style. We have something for you.
Did each of you do your own perspectives for the audiobook, the voice?
No, that was going to be far too expensive.
I was going to say.
We went with BookBaby did I got auditioned all these little voices, and I think it's probably AI generated, but I found one that I liked that I thought kind of sort of could sound like me. It didn't quite have the Southern accent that I could have sometimes, but it was pleasurable to listen to. The only part that's weird is Dan's chapter, since he's male. Hearing a female voice read his part with the very first person who's like, yeah, that was a little startling. I was expecting a male voice to come in, and it just stayed in the same voice. But I was like, okay, yeah, this is too expensive for us to hire a studio or hire professional actors. It's like, we're just going to go with this audiobook this way.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, I'm excited about it, and I still can't believe all the things that you do. Are you going to be at the Converge Autism Conference next year?
Absolutely. I've already been talking with those powers that be, because I'll put a plug in right now. That is one of the best autism conferences in the nation, but definitely if you live in the Southeast and you can get there, the quality of speakers that are there, and then just the openness and ability to be able to talk with them, especially if they have booths. A lot of them are also vendors. What I get to do, I love, and then you used to do it, but I get to interview every single speaker. So for me, I feel like as I get to do the interviews, I get to take their conference presentation and I get to kind of read through and ask the questions I wanted to, like one-on-one, and have a conversation about it. So I totally geek out about it. And so it has been really exciting. I even told it to some of my colleagues, and they're like, I can't believe you get to do that. And I was like, hey, I've been doing Converge Autism Radio for a long time.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. You've been doing it for a long time. And what's awesome is, please, everybody, go to convergeautism.com and you can find out all about the conference. I was at the very first one that was this teeny tiny little thing. And I think we took a hallway in a hotel or something.
Yeah.
And that was it. And now it's like, standing room only, huge conference.
Yeah, I was there that first year too. I was the very first year, and I think that's kind of how I met you, where we started getting to know each other. I was just a workshop presenter that first time, and then the second time I totally geeked out. They had Temple Grandin in as a keynote, and then I was a keynote, and I was like, I cannot believe I am a keynote speaker at the same conference Dr. Temple Grandin is. So the Converge really did a lot to kind of bridge my connection to Dr. Temple and getting to interview her and all of that wonderful stuff. So I have nothing but positive to say about the Converge Autism conference, and I have been to many autism conferences and summits.
Like
and this is my favorite. This one is definitely one of my
They're
favorite.
just good people. They're just the whole organization at Springbrook Behavioral Health. It's just such awesome human beings. Sorry, Springbrook Autism Behavioral Health. They're just incredible. So yeah, I'm so glad that I got to know you there, because look what spawned from all that. My God.
I know. And you said, Stephanie, you need to get yourself a mic because you need to do a podcast. And I said, absolutely not, Kristin. I will be a guest on your podcast and happy to do that. But there's no way you are getting me to do a podcast. And I do too now.
I know it's so tell the listeners about your 2 shows.
So, I started out, thanks with Kristin, kind of being an interim host with Converge Autism Radio, and very much enjoyed doing that. The only thing that felt a little stifling for me is I'm a person of faith. And for me, it is very important to be able to talk about my faith story because I would not be here and thriving and doing all the things I'm doing without my relationship with Jesus. So I wanted to be able to do a show that also could freely talk about faith, because out of respect for Converge Autism Radio, when we talk about faith-based things, we needed to keep it a little bit like, place of worship, your faith tradition.
Right. And just listeners, so we do that, yes, because not because they're against anything, just that,
there's a diversity of listeners.
Exactly. And it's all, they have everybody from everywhere coming to their hospital. So it has to stay kind of open for that. I do the same thing with my show. I don't go down any one road because it's supposed to cover all facets of mental health.
Right. And so again, like no disrespect there. Just for me, like, what? I just feel like that one thing is kind of missing for me. I really want to be open because there are so many marriages and families that have this extra layer with autism, either in the marriage or family. And that faith component is neglected. And so a lot of people want to talk about that. Right. So my husband and I, shortly after he was officially diagnosed in 2019, decided, like, what if we did kind of a show as a couple? And so sometimes on NeuroDiverse Christian Couples, which is a podcast right here on Mental Health News Radio, we may just kind of talk ourselves about our relationships or kind of things we're learning from our clientele as coaches, or we might interview people. Sometimes we might have people on the show who are researchers in autism, just kind of talk about the latest and greatest with adult autism. Sometimes we might have people who are people of faith who want to talk about maybe some misconceptions and things that have been theologically taught wrong and incorrectly that can really impact, any relationship, but specifically a relationship if one partner is really rigid and black and white in their thinking. Adding faith component in there can really actually become an abusive environment for the other spouse. So it's kind of different. Sometimes we address kids, but I do find that ones about kids are kind of more focused. I'll put that on more of a Converge Autism Radio podcast. I try to keep mine as much as possible on marriage, relationships, young adults, kids and teens, because Converge Autism does a great job of covering every facet of the lifespan of the spectrum, but it does have kind of a heavier focus on children and teens because, they're a behavioral health hospital and that's their clientele. I really like to focus on young adult and adult relationships that are on the autism spectrum.
Yeah. And it's so great. I remember a client coming to me and saying, we want to be your only podcast about autism on the network. This was when I was first starting the network and had no clue what it should be, could be, anything, as you do when you're starting something that's never been created before. But I remember someone saying that and I thought, I should maybe think about that. But what I've watched happen, I said, no, you don't really need to do that, because what I find is you do one show about autism or some, bipolar disorder or what have you, and then you have another one about it. All those listeners, they don't leave the original show where they heard anything. They just add the new show. So all it does when you have more on the same topic is give you an audience, a new audience from all these additional people talking about it, because people crave information. So it actually works out better to have multiple multiple about the same topic and get everybody's different perspective. And now we have, I don't know, like 10 shows talking about autism, which is just awesome.
Yeah. I love the diversity because you might have a host, again, that's a professional, a host who is, hashtag actually autistic, and coming from their lived experience, me, a spouse and a mom, Dr. Mary, who sometimes covers that. And she's a pediatrician and, a mom of someone on the spectrum, and, creating her own voice, really expounding for people of color and adding that component into. So I love that there are so many different things. If you're really looking for something to get educated about autism, Mental Health News Radio has so many different ones to give you a huge perspective, because that's really one of the things that I advocate for is we have to break stereotypes and myths, and whatever you think you know about autism, you don't know jack about autism. You really need to hear from different perspectives. And that's how you grow in your knowledge and your wisdom and understanding, is hearing different perspectives, especially lived experience from teens and young adults on the spectrum.
Yeah, it's really awesome to hear that other experience, because it just sort of opens your mind. It makes you feel like you're not alone, even if that experience that someone else is talking about is totally different from yours. Just the fact that another person is speaking out and sharing what they're dealing with adds a sense of community. Oh, okay, well, they may be going something completely different, but hey, we're brothers and sisters in arms here because of the topic itself.
Absolutely. And it's funny because that's exactly right on the front of my book, that you are not alone. And that's one of the taglines at the end of our podcast, is you're not alone on the journey. Because while there's a lot more prevalence of autism, a few people actually know another couple or marriage who are kind of on that same journey. And that's the beauty of podcasting and all the technology that we have. Is you may live somewhere in rural Alaska and hear somebody else's story who's coming from Australia. You'd never meet in any other way, shape, or form. But, hearing that story on a podcast, or being now, I have groups where I bring couples and families and women and men together, and it's like I never would have met that person or heard that story, right. But man, that's my same story almost, and it is so. That's what I hear the most. In the groups that I do, is like just not feeling alone and isolated, even though my situation hasn't changed, and even though I'll never meet that person. Just knowing that there's this other person in this other part of the world that's going through the same thing that I am. They're a little bit further along the journey. There's some tips and tricks we can trade with each other. And that has been the hugest positive impact on mental health, from being in a complex marriage and family system, knowing that you're not alone. And that was part of the reason of writing the story. It was really hard to be vulnerable about the mistakes, to be vulnerable about the things that I did wrong. But we want others to learn from our mistakes, and you don't have to make those same mistakes. You can make your own, but here's
you are serving yourself up.
Yeah.
And to say, look, here, I made plenty and I'm still here and my family is still, intact.
There you go.
Yeah, that in today's society with the just instant critique, how do you deal with that? Because, people are so easy to be a critic and just pick apart something. I've had it happen to me 10 gazillion times, but, because I've got shows up there that are 10 years old. And I'm like, well, I've evolved, I hope. So that thing that I said 10 years ago isn't really relevant today, but I feel I won't take them down, because I feel like, look, this is what we're showing. Like there's an evolution that takes place with human beings. One hopes for that anyway. And there's an evolution when it comes to what we're struggling with, or what is a part of our mental health journey, autism being one of those things. And so I think it's really important for people to hear about every stage of that journey.
Absolutely. And I think you and I even did a show to kind of correct something that I had said on a previous show. And I think it's personal evolution, but also as research changes and new information. So, 10 years ago, I very strongly believe that someone could not have a personality disorder and be on the spectrum. And there was enough stuff written out there that would support that opinion. But as I met different colleagues and read new research, and I was like, oh yeah, autism is about neurology. You can still have, we don't exactly know all of the origins of personality pathology and disorders. We know a common theme is family of origin trauma and attachment related trauma that can lead to that. So why couldn't someone on the spectrum, just like someone who's not on the spectrum, develop personality issues or pathologies? Which, man, makes this situation way more complex. But that was something that you and I had talked about. We did a show like the differences between, and they're kind of mutually exclusive. But as I got more information, I was like, hey, Kristin, can we do another show about that? Because some things have changed.
Exactly. And it's okay that other show is still up there. Hopefully people look at the dates of when shows are. There's nothing like getting slammed for something I said, 8 years ago.
Right. Yes. I haven't been on quite long enough to, I do get people who I find people really like to comment more on YouTube. I don't get as many people responding to the podcast link where you can subscribe and do all that good stuff. But I do find people feel more free on YouTube or my Facebook.
Oh yeah.
That's where people love to give their 2 cents in their armchair quarterbacking.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because I'm so glad about that. It's not that easy. It's very difficult to pull your phone out, go find where you leave a review. Where do you leave it? There's a million podcast apps. It's more difficult to or you have to go through more steps to leave a podcast review, and there's no one place for it. Whereas YouTube, Facebook, that there's that one place that everybody can see.
And people feel free to say whatever comes to them.
Whatever nice, wonderful, gosh, are you in mental health? Do you need mental health help? Because I would never say that or write that to somebody.
It was so interesting. I wrote an article and it got published for Focus on the Family. And they had taken I had written a 10-page article because I'm kind of verbose. And they put it down to 3 signs your spouse could be on the spectrum. And they put it all over their social media. And this woman just tears apart my article. And how could you don't even have experience of blah, blah, blah. And I said, did you even read the article? And then she admitted through our arguing, because I was like, I've got to address this. I don't usually talk to people online, but it even sound like she read it.
And you just can't help yourself. Yeah. Same here.
And I said, did you actually read the article? She's like, no, I didn't need to. I read the title. And I was like, so you're making very strong comments and opinions about what's in the article and how inappropriate and unknowledgeable I am, but you haven't read the article. And then she stopped arguing. But
exactly.
Are you kidding me? At least read it and have a little bit of common sense.
I know. And I always think too,
arguing that profusely.
Yeah, I think too, that we put all this time and energy into doing this thing that we don't have to do. I mean, we're doing it for advocacy, for, a lot of different reasons. The biggest one for me is advocacy. So why would you go out of your way to try to slam someone that this is what they're doing? It's not like I'm some big corporation that's, drilling holes in where, grouse live that are endangered. You know what I mean? It's kind of, but that is our world today. So dealing with that, it's very brave to use your voice, for your family to use their voices, because it does put you in the path of people that are not very nice online, unfortunately.
Yes. I even with, I had a lot of people, who wanted to endorse the book. And so I had these little little Canva boxes with people's quotes. And I had one of those out and someone said why bring religion into this? And I'm like, because it's my story and I can.
That's right.
It's my faith. It's my story.
It's not about you.
It's
about
negative.
Me.
So,
yeah.
And so I had to respond to that one too, because I was like, okay, we've got to stop, quote, taking religion and faith out of things, because if it is important to many of us, actually millions of us,
right,
it's okay to talk about that and to talk about how my faith was positively impacted or negatively impacted, or how my faith was not a crutch, but something that gave me strength, to get through certain situations. You don't get to tell me what my story and my faith story is. And so I had to make that point online too. Like, it's my faith story. If you don't want to read a book that has faith and autism in it, do
Then
not
don't
buy
read
it.
it. Yeah,
That is your personal right as an American individual.
absolutely. I know. And I love that. And the only I've responded to some, I've ignored really awful ones that where you're like, this is someone that, maybe should be in prison with what they're writing to me. So I'm not going to respond to that because I don't want to invite more, but, or sometimes from prison, I've had those comments too. And I'm like, oh my God, this is from a correctional facility. Okay. Not that, look, there are many people in prison. Some of my good friends have dealt with that. So I'm not putting that down either. Just, when they start getting really dangerous, I think, oh, well, I'm glad that you're not able to find where I live.
Correct. There might be a reason that you are incarcerated, sir. or ma'am.
Yeah. But there's another nice thing about this too, is you kind of take the temperature of when you say something and when you don't, and you pick and choose, and you have to do it for you. You cannot do it with the idea that you're going to change someone's mind, because that will just be perpetual disappointment. You have to do it because you want to, something to say. But the biggest response, I always think, to that kind of stuff, quote unquote, the haters, is that I keep doing shows.
Yep.
You haven't made me stop doing shows. So I do get the last word, which is, like, makes me feel good.
Right. But it is hard. I mean, I love it though. On occasion, I think just humans have a higher propensity to want to share negative and things they disagree with you on. But when I get that email every once in a while that someone's taken the time, gone to my website, used the contact form and said, I just want to tell you this show positively impacted me, or this show helped my spouse want to go through an assessment process, or this show really shed light on, it really validated my experience. So I kind of, those are the ones, like, those are the people that I am doing the show for. And so it does help me when I get people who write, who, they picked on one word or one phrase and decided they were going to go to town and totally, twist everything I said because they didn't like the one sentence I said. But when the podcast reach is now, I think the last count was like close to 40 countries and 6 continents.
Right.
And people telling me that, like, we don't have services here. We're in a remote place. We're in the military. We're on the mission field. We don't have services, or we have to keep this under wraps because we're in the military or because we're on the mission field. And like, this podcast is the only thing we get. And that's like, okay, y'all are the people I'm doing this. I mean, I'm doing it for everyone, but, especially it's just feels so good to know there is making a positive impact out there. It's not just information. It's not just knowledge, but people feel like their lives are being changed. And, for a podcast to get feedback that that's happening, that is very fulfilling.
It's very fulfilling. And then Converge's audience is all over. I don't even know what countries
they have more listeners than me. I'm a little jealous, but they have a very broad.
But it's just getting that information out there. I've seen the crest of what happened in mental health from when I started doing a show, and people were like, a podcast? How stupid. What is that? That will never. To now, where everybody and their brother, my mailman, has a podcast, which is awesome. It's about mail carriers. I'm so excited for him that he's doing it. But it's like, I'm just so happy that you go places and people know what autism is, or you go to a hair salon and you get your hair done, which hair salon for me is hair cuttery. Okay. We're not talking like expensive salon, but I love the fact that I can sit there and someone will say, yeah, I like my hairstylist. I love her. I'm obsessed with her. She's on the spectrum. And so the first visit, we just, and everybody in the salon came over and we were all talking about autism. And I thought this conversation would not have happened like this a few years ago.
Right. I think that, the podcast world really, again, bridges knowledge. And, for some people, there's all different types of modalities of liking to learn. For some people, you love ebooks or going on Google or, researching stuff online. I really am a little bit more of an audio processor. I do better hearing, and hearing voices and hearing the interaction. That helps me remember things sometimes better than reading, is hearing the interaction, hearing the questions. And then when I get to ask the questions, I get to ask the specific questions I want to know, that kind of locks that information in for me. But there are some people who reading is the way that you do that. And so, maybe the podcast doesn't, hit the same way for you, but there's a lot of people who are auditory based processors and learners. And so I think the podcast has really filled a gap there, depending on whatever your thing is, whatever you love and are passionate about, or you want to learn about. I mean, mail carriers. I just heard there's one for mail carriers now, if you are interested.
And this was so great too for me, because I love audiobooks. Like, I just finished 4 of them and I'm on to my next one. I'm going to read The Color Purple again. It is my favorite book ever written, anything by Alice Walker, but I'm going to read that one again on the audiobook. I haven't listened to it on the audiobook. But what's so awesome about that is you can do something else, this society where even though we really do only process one thing at a time, it makes you think you're doing 2 things. Because I can watch something silly, like a pet video, to satisfy my need to be watching something while I'm listening to the audiobook, which has nothing to do with what I'm watching. And for my ADHD brain, that is just fantastic.
Absolutely. And I like to listen when I'm on long road trips,
Yes.
I'll have like my little list that I've already got together, so I can just put it on. And because I love music and Sirius XM and all that good stuff. But it's like, okay, I've got these 6 podcasts I wanted to listen to. I finally have time to listen to them, or an audiobook. I've got this long drive. I can actually put that on and get through most of this on the drive. So you've done a great thing with mental health news radio, Miss Kristin.
Well, who knew? I had no idea, but the focus has changed to really, and not changed. We've gone back to our roots. This started out just to be advocacy. I listened to other people telling me that it needs to be this and it needs to be that. And that was part of my journey too, was that. And then realizing, because of COVID, you know what? I don't need to do all those things that other people are telling me to do. Well-meaning, most of them, not all. I just need to just be what I started with, which is advocacy. And that makes everything okay for me. Like, I have to be doing something that I think will hopefully help others. I can't do that by myself. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. So having other people come in and share their
cup of tea, and that's okay.
Exactly. Like, if you don't like me, that's fine. Guess what? Go listen to Dr. Stephanie, go listen to Dr. Mary, go listen to Laura Lee, whoever, like, go listen to other people. Like, it doesn't just, if you don't like me, that's fine. I don't like me a lot of the time too. So that's okay. But anyway, so the book is out now, correct?
It is out. It came out. It's been on pre-order, but now it is out. It is out there.
All right, everybody. Embracing the Autism Spectrum. Dr. Stephanie, any, I won't say last words, because this will not be our last conversation, but any last words for today?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit on how to find more about it. So I put the book, kind of all the information I collected, how you can get the 3 versions, on one web page at www.christianneurodiversefamilies, that's plural.com. And so if you are an ebook or audio or print, you can click right there and pick, the version that you would like to have. You can also read what some professionals have said about the book and author bios. If you're interested in my podcast, then go to www.christianneurodiversemarriage, that's singular. And right there on the front, listen now, and you can be connected with our podcast devoted to neurodiverse Christian couples.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Stephanie, so much for coming on. We will do more. And I'm really excited to support this book and you and all the things that you do. Your advocacy, my goodness, I feel like a lazy bum next to you.
That's my type A personality, I think.
I love it. You're so on it. I'm like that. You responded to something a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, that is Stephanie, man. She is going to get it done. So yeah. I love it.
I love being on your show. So thanks for having me back, Kristin.
Absolutely. Thank you, listeners. And we will tune in, or I hope you'll tune in for the next show. Thanks so much for joining us.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin Sananta Walker, and thank you for listening.
Me tonight, and I can ride the low, low, lows with me. I can ride the